Introduction to hardware components. The motherboard. In this section, we will start introducing the main component of every computer system, the motherboard or the mainboard. After this introduction, we can finally start focusing on each component individually to better understand their key functions and how they contribute to the system's performance. Every computing device has a motherboard. This includes smartphones, routers, tablets, smart TVs, and even cars or washing machines. A motherboard is a printed circuit board containing the main components of a computer or another computing device with connectors for other circuit boards to be slotted into. A motherboard allows all the parts of a computing device to receive power, synchronize, and communicate with each other. It contains, controls, and orchestrates the most critical components for the whole machine to function as it was designed to. It would be correct to say that the motherboard is in fact the computer itself, on which we add and set up the essential components separately, such as hard drives, memory, processors, or graphic cards. So far, we've gone through the course introduction and reviewed the main chapters in this presentation. We mentioned some basic terminologies, possible definitions of computer, input and output devices, drivers, types of computers, and the 5 generations of computing. The next chapter, Hardware Components Explained, will shed some light on each individual component of a computer system and explain its general functions, list some of the popular models and manufacturers, and advise on different considerations before purchasing a part for your computer. We'll be using different applications, virtual labs, illustrations, and common scenarios to help you understand better the orchestration between those components and show you how to confirm different details on your own. The main topics in this chapter will be the motherboard, then we have types of computer cases, we got the chipset, internal connectors, external connectors or ports, power supplies, cooling units, buses, expansion slots, which are in fact part of the internal connectors. Then we will of course discuss the processor, which is the computer's brain, the coprocessor, video adapters, for all those gamers and designers among you who would like to spend 2 grand on a powerful GPU. Then we have the network adapter, or the network interface controller. And then we have perhaps the longest and most complicated chapter in this course, memory. In the memory module, I will be including both primary and secondary memory, meaning both system memory, that we like to simply call RAM, and storage memory, such as HDDs and SSDs. The good news is that you don't have to be worried if those terms sound like gibberish to you. Unless you're preparing for your master's degree in computer engineering, you're not required to remember all of those terms by heart, not to mention their very particular differences. For example, you do not need to remember the exact differences between SRAM, DRAM, SDRAM, CDRAM, or NVRAM, but you must understand the basic concept of RAM, what it stands for, and what is its role in a computer system. The last theoretical chapter will be a brief introduction to the booting process, or the boot sequence, which is the process that occurs from the moment we power on a computer until we gain control over the operating system. Hoping that your brain hasn't melted yet by the time you reach that chapter, you might want to test your knowledge by answering a 30 questions quiz. The questions are fairly easy, some of them are a bit tricky, but I'm sure that they will help you focus on the important parts of this course and have a general idea of what is important to be familiar with in this industry. As weird as it might sound, computers, as complicated as they are, were still composed by humans, and therefore they do share some similarities with the human anatomy. I do apologize in advance for those of you who are less familiar with the human anatomy, but please bear with me. So motherboards can be compared to body types and computer cases to skin types. The chipset would be the CNS, and the connectors, which are the input and output receptors, can be the senses. Buses would be the nerve extensions. The expansion slots can be the limbs, as they add new functionalities. Hard drive connectors would be neurons, and power connectors are the blood vessels. The sound card would obviously be our voice. Next, we have the PSU, or the power supply, which provides power pulses to the entire system, And this one can be compared to the heart and the cooling units to sweating. The CPU or processor and the coprocessor would be different parts of the brain, and the CPU socket can be the skull or the meninges. The CMOS, which preserves the system time, can be the biological clock. GPUs are the optic nerves, network adapters are our communication methods, the memory is just memory, both for long and short term, and the BIOS is our subconsciousness or our instincts and reflexes. Okay, you've waited long enough. It's time to move on to our main chapter, Hardware Components Explained.